used to also sing so well. So, Your Excellency, President John Dramani Mahama, First Lady Lordina Mahama, Your Excellency the Vice President Jenana Opoku Ajaman, Honorable Speaker of Parliament, Acting Chief Justice, my Lord, both spiritual and temporal, respected chiefs, queen mothers, and your spiritual guides, and all of you, my dear brothers and sisters, I bring you peace and praise for this sacred occasion, not only here, but in all the regional capitals of this land, to give thanks to God, but under the particular theme that is being presented to us so very many times already, that of reflection, reset, and renewal for national prosperity. I just like to observe that these are not mere words. They are rather, and again, as has been observed by various religious speakers before me, these are also a call to moral clarity, national courage, and spiritual awakening for fashioning a Ghana of opportunities for an inclusive well-being of its children. To reflect is to see clearly. Set is to turn away from these blind spots that lead to destruction, division, corruption, and the very many evils that again have been talked about here. And to renew is to recommit ourselves individually and collectively to the common good. For prosperity in this light is not simply the accumulation of wealth, but the flourishing of all children of this land. For it is what economies of development have represented as people's access to food, people's access to water, people's access to shelter, healthcare, education, security, and peace. And so, with this, then let this gathering of ours mark not only a moment of gathering to give thanks and gratitude to God, but also a turning point in our own shared journey towards a more just, compassionate, and a unified country. For indeed, my dear friends, the word thanksgiving used in the Old Testament several times is not only to give thanks to God, those who give thanks to God about their own position before God. And so invariably then, it becomes also an occasion for introspection and a call to penance. And in this regard, invited here in our gathering to give thanks to God, to reflect, to reset, and to renew how we can all help make Ghana prosper and make children of this land live in integral well-being. I like to consider the prophet Jeremiah as the one who sets us on this path. For in chapter 6 of the prophecy of Jeremiah, we read this: stand at the crossroads and look and ask for the ancient paths where the good way was, and walk in that good way and there you shall find rest for your soul. So as you stand at the crossroad, do a reflection, seek and ask where the ancient paths lay that led to God. In those paths walk, and then you will find peace for your souls. And the prophet gave this exhortation to the people of Israel in a very dire situation. And again, this is how the prophet presents the situation. Because thus says the Lord, from the least to the greatest of you, everyone is greedy for unjust gain. And from prophet to priest, everyone deals falsely with his neighbor. They have treated the wounded and the painful carelessly, saying peace and peace, when indeed there is no peace and there's a need to turn to God. And so, dear friends, using the words of the prophet Jeremiah, inviting us to consider ourselves as standing at the crossroad, to discern which way to travel so that we may live in peace and prosperity. I stand here this afternoon then to just invite you to simply recognize that crossroads exist several times in our lives. It is when a single path of travel becomes multiple and becomes many. It is when a life becomes complex, inviting us to discern which path best leads to our good fortune. And this happens several times to God's people. Joshua, when he took the people of Israel into the promised land, did this to them. He invited them to repeat and to discern and to affirm for themselves the God that they want to worship. Josiah, the king of Jerusalem, when there was a discouraged exile, also do a similar exercise of resetting, asking for pardon for all the sins of the people and committing again to faithfulness to God. So my dear friends, to our past, for it's our past that indicates to us how well we lived and how happy we were. And going into our past this morning, we've listened to a few this morning, a comparison between Ghana and Singapore and India. We've listened to a few this morning, a comparison between Ghana and Singapore and India and how things began in the past. It was at independence in the past that we formulated for ourselves the coat of arms, freedom and justice. And we wanted that of technological development went good. That of technological development went good. And talking about common, it's just an experience that we do not want to excuse or keep anybody out of. And I'd like to illustrate that with a small story. Just came last night from Nairobi. In East Africa, there is the Rift Valley. In the Rift Valley, there is a community that lives, that keeps a portion of land as a common for everybody to graze his cow and his sheep on that land. Just that, they determine how many sheep and how many cattle anybody can bring to graze on that land. When anybody, for any reason, either for the purpose of gain, would increase the cows or the sheep that they will bring to graze on the land, it will cause the land to fail to serve the public good. And the land will create a lot of... So the pursuit of common good of the community will have to abide by. Otherwise, the common good fails to serve the need of the commons. Here in Ghana, we live on a land with a lot of endowments and riches about which we have prayed again this morning and thanked God for. The wealth of this land with everything that exists here are for Ghanaians. So they also must serve the common needs and the common purpose of all of us. And this just means that it's a situation in which we will not or cannot allow individual interests and individual gains to cause negative externalities for all of us. This has happened before. And when in the past this happened, as in Austria in the Alps, they created an expression called the tragedy of the commons. And the tragedy of the commons is when people who depend on a common property so abuse it that the property fails to serve the needs of everybody in the society. So, dear friends, gathered over here at the Republic, gathered for this celebration here of our Day of Republic, while we listen to the prophet Jeremiah invite us to discern the right parts of the past on which we walked to victory and to blessings, let us also recognize one thing. We've listened to pastors come this morning and exhort us. The transformation of this land will not simply be the task of the president, with all the good intentions that he may have. The transformation of this land depends on us. We have been presented as not to be only religious, but to be people of also spirituality and virtue. And so, my dear friends, all of us guided here Christians, I just like to tell you that biblical religion says one thing about all of us. Biblical religion means that our belief in God entails our vision of the world and our place within that vision. So anyone who believes in God must also formulate for himself his vision or her vision of the world, and must go on to formulate his own position and place within this vision. So whatever vision of Ghana we've gathered here to express, we need to recognize it doesn't suffice to formulate and express a vision. We need to go ahead and formulate also our own places within that vision. And that just means that we're looking for virtuous Ghanaians. We're looking for Ghanaians who are virtuous, who develop virtue, and who are led by virtue, who develop a fulcrum on which their own lives would balance on a virtuous conduct and virtuous positions. Otherwise, greed will dominate this land, and when greed dominates this land, there will be a lot of negative externalities to be borne by all of us. Negative externalities, we have them already. The Pra River doesn't sell prawns and shrimps anymore. Ofin River has become a puddle of mud. The Ankobra is already gone. Children in upstream who jump into waters that I used to do when I was a child, swim to swim, they then are taken to the hospital with ruptured scrotum because of exposure to cyanide and mercury. So the negativities are with us. Our church hospitals in the middle part of this country talk about increasing children born with deformities. So my dear friends, the external negativities are already with us. And it causes virtuous thinking to not simply look for personal gain and interest, but to think about Ghana as a nation. We need a real awakened sense of solidarity, fraternal solidarity, each one caring and each one feeling for the other. And in this sense of fraternity, we can face all situations. Facing all situations, then, we replan our journey. We set for ourselves new objectives and goals, and we do not yield to despair. Rather, embracing the values of our own past and the religions and faiths, we pursue and formulate the type of solutions and situations which best help us all achieve our common good. When in 2015, Ban Ki-moon stood at the United Nations to present the Sustainable Development Goals, he said that he was formulating a narrative that includes the integral development of every person.